Welcome to today's edition of the Simply Financial Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Calandra. As always, I want to increase your financial IQ with today's discussion, which is about how much net worth you need to be in the top 1% of Americans. To begin with, let's talk about the definition of net worth. Net worth is a formula. If you total up your assets, all of your assets added together, what they total up to, do the same thing with your debts and come up with a total amount of debts, and then subtract your debts from your assets. That answer is your net worth. Said another way, if you sold everything you owned and paid off everybody you owed money to, how much would be left over? That is net worth. I find that tracking net worth, being conscious of the building of wealth by tracking net worth, is incredibly valuable. I've talked about it in lots of other episodes. We keep track of this through a net worth statement. I do this personally. I advise my clients to do it as well. So now that we have net worth out of the way, I want to point out that I'm going to draw heavily on research from Charles Schwab. It is their 2024 Modern Wealth Survey. I want to start with pointing out that when surveyed, Americans said that if you had a net worth of $2.2 million, they would consider that to be wealthy. That sounds about right to me. Now, granted, depending on where you live, the lifestyle you have, even your age would impact your view on this. But that 2.2 million number didn't surprise me. Before we get to how much net worth you need to be in the top 1%, let's talk about the top 10% for a moment and work our way down. To be in the top percent of Americans, you need a net worth of about $855,000. I think the survey actually said $854,900, but let's just round it. You need about $855,000 to be in the top 10% of Americans. This, I think, is attainable for most Americans with some planning, with living beneath your means and practicing some very good winning money strategies. It doesn't seem insurmountable to me, depending on who's listening and where you are in your life and what has happened to you, perhaps. You might feel differently. But $855,000 gets you in the top 10%. The top 5%, you have to be a millionaire, a net worth millionaire. You would need a net worth of about $1.03 million to get yourself into the top 5% in the U.S. Top 2%. Top 2%, you jump all the way from 1.03 million to 2.47 million to be in the top 2%. Now, this corresponds pretty closely to the number I gave you a little bit ago about how much Americans think you need in wealth to be considered wealthy. So $2.47 million of net worth gets you into the top 2%. And then for the grand finale, to be in the top 1%, you need a net worth of $5.8 million. This is not nearly as easy as some of the other numbers, of course, but I think for folks that are good earners, good savers, good investors, and allow time to do its thing with compound interest, it is certainly something that can be accomplished, but it's not easy. As the saying goes, if it was easy, everybody would do it. But you need a $5.8 million net worth to be in the top 1%. Additionally, let me say that this has been growing quickly. In 2022, in the Charles Schwab Modern Wealth Survey for that year, you needed $4.4 million to be in the top 1%. So in 2 short years, it went from 4.4 to 5.8 million. More recently, in the 2023 Modern Wealth Survey, you needed 5.1 million. So even over the last year, we're still dealing with inflation, and the markets have done well. The real estate market, the stock market, generally been a good market for savers and investors. But that's a 12% increase, going from 5.1 in 2023 to 5.8 million. So the barrier to entry to be in the top 1% has grown a lot over the last couple of years. So if you're out there, you could think about where you are, where you would like to be, Some people aspire to be in the top 1%. I could say candidly, over the course of my life, I wanted to be in the upper tier in terms of wealth. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to be successful. Some people, either because of circumstances or their own goals and objectives, might be very happy at other tiers. That's part of what makes this American system so wonderful. To a large extent, I believe you could pick and choose where you want to be. That's not an absolute philosophy, but I think it holds true an awful lot of the time. So once again, to be in the top 1%, you need $5.8 million of net worth. Let me just talk before I finish up about the limitations of this number. I think it can be very aspirational. It could motivate you. It could put your finances in perspective, hopefully in a positive way, although could be a negative way that provides some motivation to improve things. But one of the limitations here, it does not adjust for age. As you get older, you tend to become more wealthy. Just the life cycle of taking on debt and mortgages and raising children as examples, once they've run its course and you have equity in your homes because the mortgage is paid down and the real estate's probably gone up over time. After you raise your kids, usually have more discretionary money. You usually make more money, most people, in your 40s and 50s than in your 20s and 30s. That allows for some wealth building during those decades. It's also true in your 60s, by the way. So this doesn't adjust for age. If you're younger and you're listening to this, don't be distraught. It's okay, especially if you're doing good money management. You are planning for the future. And if you're doing that, you're likely to end up in the top 10, top 5, top 2, or maybe even the top 1% of Americans in terms of net worth. So I hope you found this information to be valuable. I think the numbers might surprise some people. I really like this topic a lot. I was excited to record this, so I hope you got some benefit out of it. I will be back with you on the next episode of the Simply Financial podcast very soon. In the meantime, check us out at elliottwealth.com and subscribe to the Simply Financial podcast. I'd appreciate that. Thanks again.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of Osaic Wealth, Inc., and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Please note, the information being provided is strictly as a courtesy. When you link to any of the websites provided here, you are leaving this website. We make no representation as to the completeness or accuracy of information provided at these websites. Nor is the company liable for any direct or indirect technical or system issues or any consequences arising out of your access to or your use of third-party technologies, websites, information, and programs made available through this website. When you access one of these websites, you are leaving our website and assume total responsibility and risk for your use of the websites you are linking to. Securities and advisory services are offered through Osaic Wealth, Inc., member FINRA, SIPC. Insurance services offered through Elliott Wealth Management Services, LLC, not affiliated with Osaic Wealth, Inc.